So one thing we've noted and kind of seen for a while is Canon's done a pretty decent job in the mirrorless game. You know, they came up pretty quickly after adapting to it after, the mirrorless game for a little while. But then I feel like they've kind of been stagnant for a while, and there are a lot of reasons for that. Maybe just, they're trying to find ways to improve or, with, world events going on. And it was kind of a question this year is, what could they do that could be really impressive or impactful or more innovative to an extent? And I even debated not making this video about this camera because I'm like, is it just another cinema type camera? But I really thought about it and I looked at it. We're just going to discuss it just briefly. I'm going to hear your thoughts on it down in the comments below as well. I think it's a very impactful camera for Canon, both because it's a very good hybrid camera. And of course, we're talking about the Canon EOS R5 C, that C being for cinema. So you're gonna have your hybrid between your stills and pretty more in-depth video compared to your normal Canon camera to an extent. And the only reason why it's not like super duper super exciting is because it is $4,500, but it offers that extra video extent and you don't have, and this thing is kind of like a baby or like kind of a mashup between the Canon R5, which this is about what, $500 or $600 more than that. Canon R5, great camera, had some heating issues when you did video and stuff like that, and they kind of fixed it, but it's still kind of wonky. But then I went up to their C70, which is more cinema focused, and this is kind of a magash between both of those right here with this R5 C. So you're getting basically an R5 and the C70 combined. It's basically a bulky R5 to an extent. And what's interesting is just looking at it, it kind of resembles, once again, mixed between the R5, basically a Fuji X-H1 with the top looking down look and how their screens kind of looked, the LCD screen that they had at top. But then you kind of have the big bulky back, and that's to incorporate an internal fan to really help with the unlimited recording 8K video up to like 60 frames per second, even does 4K 120 whatever. But this fan, it's a big addition to it, and we heard about it. We weren't sure they were going to be using it, but that is a big addition, and that's what's going to separate this and make this pretty impactful for them or for people using it. And the one complaint, and there's been a little bit of video, but the one complaint is like, well, won't the fan be too loud? And they offered several options for that. It's basically going to be, you can set it to where as soon as you hit record, the fan will shut off. So there's nothing. Or if you want to keep it on low, they're very positive that it's not going to impact your recording whatsoever, especially if you have like an external mic mounted or you're, recording elsewhere. It's going to be absolutely no problem at all. So even though it's a big, bulky camera, it's kind of chunky, I think it's a pretty cool feature. Pretty cool thing. So what exactly is this? Once again, it's 45 megapixels, full frame, mirrorless, CMOS sensor. So once again, you're kind of getting a similar camera to what we have. Dual pixel AF, one of the best autofocus systems out there. Was hoping we'd hear a bit more about the quad pixel AF, but I think they're still developing all that kind of stuff. But what I also like about this in regards to functionality and customization is that I think there's 13 customizable buttons on it. But if you look at the top left of the top of the camera where the switch is, you have off, photo, and video. So you have dedicated, memorable settings of both. So that way the menus completely change depending on which one you're in. So if you're in photo, it's only photos options and it remembers whatever you're using. But a lot of people, like us for video and more advanced people as well, having a dedicated video that remembers a lot of your settings and all that kind of stuff is absolutely key. And I felt that was a very, very good decision. We've seen that, but to include that on here, sub 5,000, cool. And like I mentioned, this will do 8K video up to 60 frames per second. All your kind of how you're shooting it, all the different kind of formats that it has. But what I do like is that it is a dual card type system. So you're essentially going to have a CF Express B and then that SD UHS-2 slot. And the cool thing about that in video terms or in video frames is that you can shoot that RAW, the log, whatever kind of RAW you want onto that first card, the one that's pretty heavy and flat. But then you can also shoot proxy and more compressed and easier to read video backup onto that SD card slot as well. So just think that's a really cool addition and something that I think is pretty crucial if you're a filmmaker or a content creator if you want to go above and beyond. And of course, we're talking about this being a hybrid, so that's a lot of the video stuff, and there'll be a couple little things we'll touch on that's for a combo of both. But stills wise, once again, 45 megapixels, so you're going to have a lot of room to work with. Pretty good dynamic range. The thing is, though, it's not a super fast camera. You're going to get 12 frames per second, and if you're electronic, it's 20, whatever, to that extent. So it's not going to be like a sports action heavy camera as well. 12 is plenty enough for the most part, for what you're doing. You have 100% viewfinder and autofocus coverage, which is also very key. And it will have your typical face, eye detect, blah, 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 and animal detect, I think they even said is thrown in there. So you got the stills, and now you're getting uber pumped up cinema video that is not in a cinema type camera, which is big for them. And just to kind of wrap up the features and everything that I think that's important, you'll have your 3.5 millimeter mic input. Obviously, you can use a mic into it, and a 3.5 millimeter headphone, so that way you can monitor your audio or anything going on. You have your 3.2 inch tilt touchscreen, kind of what we've seen standard now, which is funny because a lot of people used to complain about that in the past, but it's been widely accepted across various brands, and it's common sense of why it is good to use, because you can see yourself and see if you're in frame and if you look good. Well, I know I'm in frame, but I don't know about the last part. I think my only real gripe with this camera is, especially for how big and chunky it is, I guess there's two, is that it doesn't have a full HDMI port. You've got the mini. So once again, you've got this big chunky camera, and you can't fit a full-size HDMI slot in there, going out to whatever. They're known to be crappy and break and all that kind of stuff, in my opinion. So it's just kind of weird that they have this targeted camera and they're just like, oh, we're going to skimp on this. So there's that, even though you can do raw video out to some recorders, all that kind of stuff. Pretty advanced for what it is, but pretty cool. The other thing is, it doesn't have built-in image body stabilization, which I think, once again, is kind of a big miss. You already got this chunky-ass camera. Put it in there. Just whop it in there, and you'd be good to go. So all in all, at the end of this, you have a $4,500 camera. It is a cinema camera that they're not necessarily pricing as a cinema camera, once again. And I don't want to say only because it's a lot of money, but it is only $500 or $600 more than the more stills-friendly R5. But this is what you have with the new Canon EOS R5 C. Once again, I wasn't thinking about touching this camera or even mentioning it, but I do think it's an impactful thing for Canon. So I just wanted to share my thoughts on it, and I wanted to hear your thoughts as well. Is this as big of a thing for Canon as it kind of seems? Do you feel like, I don't want to say waking up, but do you feel like they're kind of getting in tune with things? It's at least exciting, hopefully, if you're a Canon user, and especially a video creator as well. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and I think Canon kind of did something a little exciting. Even though it's kind of a mishmash, it's not necessarily brand spanking new. I think they got a little something here.